What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Deadpool and Wolverine, the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe film. While this film is the third Deadpool movie, it's the first one under the leadership of Marvel Studios, the first film to come out since Marvel acquired the various film rights they didn't have in the Fox deal, namely the X-Men characters and the Fantastic Four, and we know Fantastic Four is coming out next year. This is also the first R-rated film from Marvel Studios as well, and it's obviously coming at a interesting and integral time for the MCU, as we've been talking about for a while now, in the sense that the film strategy, the film narrative post Avengers Endgame has been uneven and unclear, to say the least. We don't really know what we're building up to in these next Avengers movies coming out in the next few years. Additionally, the MCU TV shows on Disney Plus have largely not worked, and now we know that Disney, from the mouth of Bob Iger himself, we understand that Disney is pulling back on Disney Plus in terms of how many big, expensive shows they're putting out this year. All that's to be said that a lot has been riding on Deadpool and Wolverine, and a lot of people have put expectations on this film to reestablish the MCU's North Star, so to speak, moving forward. And of course, this has been complicated by the departure of Jonathan Majors and his character King the Conqueror from the MCU due to all the issues with Jonathan Majors in real life. So Marvel has been under a bit of strain, and we kind of saw that come to a head last fall when The Marvels was released to box office disinterest. Deadpool and Wolverine is a lot of fun for Marvel fans, the comic book faithful. The film is incredibly referential to the MCU's past and future. Of course, all the fourth wall breaking from Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is to be expected. The movie openly drags the state of the MCU and bemoans the fact that we're in a more difficult time right now. The other side of that coin, though, is despite the fact that there's lots of legit laugh moments and clap moments for people that understand the never-ending meta references of Deadpool and Wolverine, this is a film that is completely uninviting to any sort of casual viewer. If you do not understand these references, and a lot of these references are pretty deep, pretty internet baked, like you have to really be in the know to know some of these references, this movie is not going to make any sense to you at all. It's so uninviting in that regard. There are some issues with multiversal storytelling that pop up in this film, not issues unique to Deadpool and Wolverine, but issues I think the audience has become pretty familiar with at this point. Also, Deadpool and Wolverine is a lot less consequential to the future of the MCU than I think a lot of people expected going in. That being said, it's a really fun romp for what it is. It's awesome to be back with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. The movie is quite reverent to the Fox X-Men films of the past, which I really appreciate. I have a lot of nostalgia for those films, despite their wild swings in quality for good and bad. So I think the film was ultimately successful for those intended audience members. And unfortunately, this is not a film that will change anyone's mind on the MCU requiring too much homework. This is certainly the greatest example of that, honestly. If you're someone who hasn't been a big fan of Deadpool in the past, or the Ryan Reynolds shtick, so to speak, I mean, how could you possibly expect that to be changed going to see this movie? It's very much tripling down on what that has been to this point. In a sense, I feel like Deadpool and Wolverine is almost the culmination of this degree of fan service, this degree of meta-ness in the MCU, and we kind of had this seeded with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness 2 years ago, where we had John Krasinski's Reed Richards appear on screen. Of course, a internet fan casting that didn't come to pass until it did in a different universe via that film. I'll get to more of those specifics in a bit regarding Deadpool and Wolverine, but it feels like post-Deadpool and Wolverine, we're kind of circling the drain on those types of things being effective moving forward. Now, I'd be curious what happens in Avengers Secret Wars in terms of how the X-Men are introduced to this world and all of that. I think Deadpool and Wolverine, the most consequential thing it does regarding MCU storytelling is probably bringing in the Time Variance Authority, bringing in the TVA, previously seen on Loki on Disney Plus, bringing that to the big screen, making that even a bit more mainstream, and putting that multiversal, multiple timeline phenomenon front and center. And we know to kind of expect that leading in to the Avengers and whatnot, and we assume the Fantastic Four movie next year will be in a different timeline, and that's how the X-Men will come to be. We'll be introduced to them in media res via Secret Wars. That's kind of the expectation. So I guess in a sense, Deadpool and Wolverine is laying the very beginning of that groundwork. How much of that is really true, we have to wait until we see more to really say. I've only really been talking about meta and real world implications. To get into the film itself, I actually think it does a pretty clever, smooth, clean job of getting Deadpool, out there in the timeline hopping world. Matthew McFadden from Succession fame, of course, very much doing a Tom Wambsgans impression as a TVA agent called Paradox, and kind of enlisting Deadpool to retrieve a Logan, a Wolverine, to help preserve a timeline, etc., etc. It's pretty straightforward plot, honestly. Deadpool has to save his timeline from being pruned, being erased, something we've come to understand from the Loki series again. And we get a little bit of the past characters of the Deadpool films, really via that instance where we see Wade spend some time with the past characters, seeing Negasonic, seeing Yukio, seeing Morena Baccarin's character, seeing his blind roommate, etc. We get to meet all them, Colossus as well. I was expecting them to be in the movie a bit more than they ended up being, honestly, but really, before you know, we're kind of off to the races, spending time with Deadpool once he finally finds the right Wolverine to take with him. And they make a point of this not being the same timeline, the same Logan who met his really satisfying end in James Mangold's Logan film of 2017. This is a different Logan, which I think keeps it super clean. Honestly, there's no changes to that character at all. And I actually think we get a really funny moment kind of in the beginning of the film where we watch Deadpool beat the shit out of many TVA agents with the corpse of 2017 Logan, when he realizes that no, he actually did die, and he beats them up with his adamantium bones. It's really funny, especially because it's set to NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, the first of many satisfying needle drops in this movie. I think it's one of the strongest Marvel film soundtracks for sure. Also, songs of note: AC/DC's Hell's Bells, Avril Lavigne's I'm With You, which was a big surprise to me. A massive moment for in the climax of the film of Madonna's Like a Prayer, fucking banger. Also, the Goo Goo Dolls at the end as well. Great song choices. But once we, finally get Deadpool and Wolverine, we do get a series of them fighting. And, I think it kind of lends itself to another kind of aspect of this story where you have multiversal storytelling, which is something that's largely incredibly stakesless because you can always just find these characters again, new timeline. You can always go back in time, fix things, etc., right? That is compounded by the fact that Deadpool and Wolverine are both invincible characters. They heal, they don't die. They're effectively never in any danger. So when we watch them fight, it is really fun to watch them beat the shit out of each other because it can get really gritty, really gnarly, especially R-rated. But it's really never much of any substance. Similarly, I guess along these lines, in the third act, you have them encounter many other Deadpools, all these Deadpools from various other timelines, etc. And big, small, male, female, old, kid, Japanese, etc. Right? Cool visual. The issue, though, is that's a multiversal thing that I think the audience has come to know from the animated Spider-Verse films. So it doesn't really hit the same way. It certainly doesn't come across as unique by any means. Another thing that kind of fell a little flat for me was once they get whisked off to the Void as this kind of like purgatory in between timelines place where it lends itself, I think, pretty cleverly to all the cameos we get in the film. But visually, like they make a joke, a reference to Mad Max and Furiosa specifically, but visually just doesn't look very good. It looks very much like classic, like this is an Atlanta soundstage that Marvel has worked on for decades at this point. But the cameos, I think, are pretty fun. The first one, and again, these are cameos that you kind of got to know what's going on. You got to have a history with these kind of movies to understand them. But if you understand them, they're really fun. They're really satisfying. I had lots of laughs and claps in my theater as a lot of them were revealed. The first of which was Chris Evans. And the dialogue sets it up that, it's Captain America. And then you realize, no, it's Chris Evans portraying his first superhero character. Of course, Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four in 2005. And I was like, wow, really fun, really clever. I like that. I got a big clap moment in my theater. Later on in the film, or actually subsequently after that, we meet a lot of the OG Fox characters, the original Sabretooth, the original Toad, Pyro from X2. We see a Juggernaut dressed like Vinnie Jones was in X-Men The Last Stand, but played by a different actor, and really funny quip from Wade in terms of him being the third actor to play Deadpool, because of course there's a different Juggernaut in Deadpool 2, etc. Like, those are lines you don't get if you, haven't kept up. But then, of course, later in the film, later in the Void, we get introduced to someone we expected, Daphne Keene's X-23 from Logan. Of course, Daphne Keene, a good, 8 years older now, full adult at this point. She was just a kid in the movie. But then, the three kind of surprises. Jennifer Garner as Elektra coming back, which was spoiled ahead of time. That was announced. We knew that one. But the two big surprises were Wesley Snipes returning as Blade, big one, and then Channing Tatum returning as Gambit. And I say returning, that is the most meta of all drops, in the sense that Channing Tatum was circling and attempting to make a Gambit film at Fox for many years, and it was in development hell forever and just didn't come to be. And that's really what his presence in the film was all about. And it's comic accurate, so you have Channing Tatum doing an absurd Cajun accent. It's really funny. And again, I think to me, that's kind of like the high point. Like, you can't top Tatum actually being Gambit after we did Krasinski doing Mr. Fantastic. Like, we're out of these options at this point. That being said, I think it's pretty fun. Of course, the villain of the film, who we meet in the Void, is Emma Corrin's Cassandra Nova, the sister of Dr. Xavier, and she's incredibly powerful. I think she's handled pretty well. I enjoy the performance from Corrin. Ultimately, the plot is not super concerned with her, because the plot is really focused on lots of jokes and meta references as we've been going through. So I think for what she's allowed to do, it's a pretty solid performance, and the character has a decent presence. One thing I think didn't really hit for me at all was the dog that comes up a lot. The dog of Nice Pool, Ryan Reynolds playing a different version of Deadpool as well. A lot of stuff didn't really hit for me, but I think that's kind of to be expected when you have this many jokes. To be expected, not everything can hit in a movie like this when there's so much humor, there's so much in your face, laughs and references and stuff. But the dog stuff, I just didn't find super funny. Nice Pool was a bit better, honestly. The Lady Deadpool stuff, assumingly played by Blake Lively, we never see her face. Fun reference, I guess, from the internet, but doesn't make much of an impression in the film. I thought for a second they were going to actually take the opportunity to have Logan kill himself and actually let Hugh Jackman rest again and not portray this character anymore, but they both survive at the end. And throughout the film, Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, makes many references about the fact that they'll keep trotting out Hugh Jackman in this role until he's 90, which got a lot of laughs, albeit. But yeah, ultimately the movie is pretty buttoned up, because all these cameos, all these references, it's all self-contained. This really has nothing much to do with the future. So I guess the question is, to what degree is Deadpool in the big Avengers movies, the big multiversal storytelling that's going to reset the MCU? I would not be shocked if this was the last we see of Hugh Jackman, although it would be foolish to predict he would never come back again. That being said, he is getting up there in age in terms of maintaining this level of physique, which the movie does a point of showing as well. So yeah, I think it's fun for what it is. It's especially enjoyable for the hardcore faithful that understand everything being referenced and all the root of all the humor. It does come across as a bit lackluster in terms of the promises of this film being super consequential to the MCU. And quality wise, I think it's a huge step up from some recent ventures, just because it's pretty blockbuster. But now I would say Captain America: Brave New World and Fantastic Four are now bearing this weight of reestablishing the future narrative, because this film gives no hints about future villains and future, large scale film to film, storytelling and build up the way we had in the Infinity Saga. We still aren't there yet. So I guess it depends what you're looking for. But let me know, what did you think about Deadpool and Wolverine? What was your favorite moment? What are you most excited to see these characters do next? And for more film reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.